Hi there, today I'm going to be taking a look at the Fox Float X2 rear shock, specifically the model year 2021. I'm just going to show you the various updates and changes that they've made to the shock. So let's get started. Let's take a look at what comes in the box. So it comes in this new redesigned packaging with the Fox branding on it. And then it obviously has your particular configuration that you've got. This is available in lots of different sizes. And then inside you've got the tuning guide, which is just quickly explaining all the different settings that you can do on this shock. It can be a little bit complicated, this shock, so it's nice that they give you a little tuning guide in the box. You can get it all from Fox's website as well. You get a Fox sticker, always got to have stickers. These are the volume spacers or tuning bands, which basically allow you to adjust the shock for bottom out resistance. I assume there'll be maybe one or two in the actual shock, but that's how they work. It's just a two-piece. You just slide them on and you fit them around the lower of the shock. If you want to see how they're fitted, I've got a previous video of the older version of this shock. It's pretty straightforward. And then you have this little tool which is designed to hold the adjuster in place in case it's got stuck with dirt, and then you can use it to, so it will hold the 6mm in place, and then you can adjust the 3mm in the center. So we'll get the shock itself out. Just have a quick look around it. So they've changed a few things on it. It comes with the bushings installed. Obviously it doesn't come with mounting hardware because each bike is slightly different. If you're going to be getting the mounting hardware, and I'm going to assume most people are going to be using Fox's standard mounting hardware, I'd recommend getting the heavy duty stainless steel version because it lasts much longer. So it basically comes like this. You'll have your spacers. Now these are obviously going to be dependent on the size. Also this is going to be dependent on the size of your mounting on the frame, and then it will come with some O-rings. It's pretty straightforward to install. You can normally do it by hand. If not, you can do it with a vise, or they do a proper tool for doing it, but you can usually push it in by hand, and then you just put the O-ring over, and then just put your spacer over. Obviously you'd center that up. Should be even on both sides. They've redesigned this top section here to give it a better compatibility with frames, so it's slightly more offset. And they've moved the high-speed rebound down to the bottom. It used to be on this same circuit, but it actually has to be in line, so it's down the bottom here. It has these little milled patterns on, and it's also got the ability for you to put an Allen key in so you can adjust it while it's on the bike if you've got a frame that's particularly awkward to maneuver around and you can't get your fingers into it. And then you've got, so red is rebound, blue is compression, and it's a 3mm for the small one and a 6mm for the large one. And it's pretty straightforward to do. They used to include a little tool with these shocks. If you look at my previous video, you'll see the one. I'll put an image of it on screen. This was really handy for when you were on the trail and you were tuning the shock, but for some reason they stopped including it. And here's the firm switch, or climb switch. I refer to it as the fire road switch because it's pretty much the only time I ever use these things. But they've removed it from the compression dial and made it independent, so it sits above the IFP. This is basically an overflow chamber for the oil. So now they've made it independent, it should be slightly more usable. As I say, I very rarely use this. It's only used for fire road climbs, so I find it takes too much traction off the shock, but it's handy to have that. And then it's Kashima coated. It's supposed to have updated the seals on this, so it's supposed to run smoother. One of the modifications they've done on these shocks over the years, they've moved the Schrader valve so it's at an angle, so when it's on the frame it's easier to get the shock pump on. So we'll look at the bottom here. So this is the retention clip, which is used to hold the air sleeve in place. The way you get this off is you just need some sort of pick. I've just got a cheap dental one here, and then you just fit it under the clip, pop the clip off, and then you hold the shock, you rotate the sleeve until these keyed patterns line up, and then you can just remove the sleeve to fit your volume spacers. The very first version of this shock didn't have one of these retention clips. Over the years they've added it on, and the various other updates that they've done to the shock. The original one had to be modified to have a little grub screw installed, which held the sleeve in place, and they dropped the pressure down because when they originally designed it, I don't think they'd anticipated the amount of abuse that the shock was going to get. The issue you've got basically is, say this, for example, this has 300 psi. Now that's 300 psi when it's fully extended like this, but it's not going to be like that most of the time, is it? It's going to be compressed. So obviously you compress, and then the pressure inside here is going to go up, and they didn't design it correctly the first time. This is not a diss on them. They had to recall the shock, and then modify it, and then drop the pressure back down, and then they had to redesign it. It's not great for people like myself who bought the first generation version, because you bought the shock thinking you could run it at 300 psi. But anyway, they've ironed that problem out. They're in the 5th or 6th version of this now, so seem to have got it sorted. I've ridden the X2 over a number of years and model revisions. When it first came out, it was originally designed for downhill bikes, so it had a very heavily damped feeling, similar to what you get from a coil shock. But over the years, Fox have evolved it, so it's developed into a nice balanced shock. So you have the poppiness or liveliness that you get from an air shock, but it still retains some of the trail hugging characteristics that you would get from a coil shock. I'm using all the cliches there. Now, it's not as good as a coil as far as I'm concerned, but it's pretty damn close, and you get the flexibility of being able to adjust it with the shock pump, and it's considerably lighter. Now, if you want to use it on shorter travel bikes, I'd say there's better options there because, as I say, it's more of a balanced shock. It's not as lively as some of the shorter travel shocks are, so there's better options there for you. So if you've got a medium to long travel bike, I feel it's a nice compromise and it's a really good shock. But that was just an overview of the 2021 shock. If you've got any comments or questions, please feel free to leave them in the box below. If you got this far into the video, I do appreciate it, and thanks for watching.